that song, that bass line, it's just been such a signature for me for so long, that the idea of sort of celebrating that anniversary with a signature bass seemed like a fun idea. I had done a signature bass about 15, 16 years ago, but I knew this was going to be a different deal, because that was very much I don't want to say inexpensive, but it was an entry-level instrument, and I knew that this was going to be different, that this was going to be a premium piece of kit. What I didn't know was how, to the degree to which you were going to embrace the idea and really take it and run with it. And I think you know me well enough by now that I'm not Mr. Technical. You really had to introduce me to certain aspects of the production of the thing. And we got into talking about the woods and tell us about the materials and then the electronics, which are really radical.
Well, it was kind of like a perfect storm of on the electronics of I'd always wanted to work with Neve, and unbeknownst to me, Rio was recorded on a Neve console, and so you already have a long history with Neve, and this was the opportunity to approach them and say, listen, we've got this really cool project. I know you're going to love it. Would you be interested in working with us? And they were incredible to work with. And everybody on the engineering team were bass players. And so this was I got the impression it was almost like they would have done it for free in their spare time, because it was just so much fun. And they nerded out more than I've ever heard of anybody nerding out on a preamp on all the little components, and they killed it. They just absolutely nailed the tone, the battery life, the noise floor. Everything was just unbelievable. And I hope you agree.
It must have been so much fun for you nerding out with those guys on that level, because it's a rarefied atmosphere, isn't it? Living in that atmosphere of electronics. Noise floor. I'd never heard that before. I love that. I love whatever that means. I like that. I like that phrase.
Be a good name for a band.
Yeah.
We're all kind of the same, I think, in that we're doing what we love, and in that respect, we're kind of like kids. We get to play with stuff and create new things, and so that's definitely the feel I got from the engineering team at Neve. It's just that they love what they do, they're passionate about it, and they're incredibly good at it.
That's really been the secret sauce, hasn't it, with this project? Because I really got into the aesthetic, and we'll talk a little bit about that, about what the bass looks like, and the design, the design and the colors, but really knowing that the engine was going to honor this particular moment in time. When I started off, nobody wanted to play Gibson, nobody wanted to play Fender. It was all about the new instruments that were coming out of Japan, Ibanez, Tama drums, and Roland. Nobody wanted to, we all wanted to define ourselves by this new style, but like, wow, how that has changed now, and everybody wants everything. And so I think that we've done something kind of clever, or you've done something kind of clever, which is a super modern instrument that sort of speaks of, a moment, sonic moment, which was the start of the 80s, but sort of pushes it into today. I think it's great.
Oh man, I love that. And I've always wanted to ask you, one of the things that we hear a lot from people who play our basses live is how it changes how the rest of the band can hear them. Have you experienced that? Have you heard from the other members of the band that, I'm able to hear you better, I can lock in with you better?
Definitely. I think in part it's been so much fun to really get into the basses that I've been playing more than I have been in years. And so I'm bringing a new level of myself to the stage today, because I've been really turned on by the instruments, I've I don't know, I found like it's just been like riding the fastest horse. And like I say, there's a lot of sound on our stage, and you've got to find this place, and to, and if we're going to walk off stage and any other band member is going to say, wow, the bass that was smoking tonight, then I know I've got to play really hard and hot, but at the same time, but without drowning anybody else out. And that's been happening. To some degree, the template for the Duran sound was set on that first album, songs like Girls on Film, Planet Earth, then into the second album, Rio. Since then, we've done all sorts of different things, but then we come back around Future Past, this most recent album, which was the first recording that I did with Dingwall basses. I mean, that was a big thing, man. I mean, it's weird. It's weird. I think guitar players, this is my experience. Guitar players usually have a battery of instruments that they take with them everywhere, and whether they're in the studio or on stage, they, for a particular song, they'll reach for a particular instrument, and they love that, they love expressing themselves through different instruments. For me, the bass experience is completely the opposite. It's like, I don't ever want to change my bass in a show. I want to walk out on the stage, and I want to walk off stage holding the same instrument. So I've got to have quite a degree of versatility in that one instrument, so I'm getting that here. I'm getting a lot of heat, but I can also pull it back. There's a lot of softness, hardness. There's a lot of things that I can do with the tone.
How do you find it in terms of expression? You mentioned that you can get a lot of different tones. How expressive have you found it, either through dynamics or through just moving your hands around?
Yeah, I mean, it's way ahead of me. I feel, I mean, for me to, I mean, I'm only beginning to, appreciate the possibilities, that the instruments have. I'm sure there are players out there that work a lot harder on their playing than I do. They're probably appreciating the versatility of your guitars more than me. I feel like it takes me wherever I want to go. It's like driving a Ferrari in a 60 mile an hour, limit. It's like, I know it can take me further. That's just down to me. I'm not limited by the bass at all. I'm only limited by my own chops, or by how much practicing I've been doing. That's up to me. The basses have got as much as any human's gonna want, I think. And of course the design of the thing. I mean, we've kind of had fun with that, haven't we? And I've got to give a shout out to Patty Palazzo, because she's my design guru. She's worked on so many Duran projects over the years, and the first thing we decided to do was take the colors of the Rio album project, that had been, it was quite Nick calls the Rio album cover the Mona Lisa of the 80s. And who am I to argue? But it has a very distinct color palette, thanks to the design work of Malcolm Garrett and the painter Patrick Nagel. We ended up doing 4 variations on the theme, right? Which I'm so excited. I mean, I've been playing beta versions of the what I call the 82, which is the limited edition version of this bass, of which there are 82 models. So don't wait around. Run, don't walk if you want one of those. But there's 82 of those, and that is strictly to the color palette of the album cover itself. And then we decided that we were just going to then, why would we do something? So much work has been put into this thing. Why would we only do it 82 times? So we're going to be releasing an unlimited version of this bass in 3 different colorways. Right, Sheldon?
100%. And
Yeah.
hopefully more colors to come.
I mean, you're aesthetic as a company. I mean, I mean, I love your color palettes. I've got some beautiful instruments of yours. I mean, I've got a deep pink. There's a very dark green. I mean, you always seem to every time I get a new bass from you, I'm like, oh, I want a car in that color.
Mm.
I mean, what goes into when you're thinking about, when you're just coming to the end of when you're refining a new model and you're thinking about the colorways and how it's going to look, how much, what is that process for you typically?
It's almost 100% intuitive. I've just always liked colors. I've always paid attention to colors, and because of that, I think that gives anybody, it gives them sort of an instinct as to where colors are going. If you're paying attention to them constantly, then you kind of see the arc of which colors are becoming out of fashion and which colors are becoming more exciting. And so sometimes it'll be the middle of the night, I'll wake up, or sometimes I'll see something and I'll go, that would make a great color, and I'll take a picture of it and save it for later. And I think a lot of that stemmed back to my older sister Karen, who used to come back from concerts, and either I just picked up on what she was saying and ignored the rest, or else this is what she came back and told her little brother Sheldon was, you should have seen the guitars at the concert. There was this yellow one, or there's sunburst, and so to me it was like, oh, guitars have to look exciting, and it means something to people. Because how many people in the audience are going to really be able to understand tone, but they'll be able to understand what they see, and they'll like what they see, or they won't like what they see, but they'll go home and they'll describe it, and that will stick with them. So tone is important, but so are visuals.
100%. I love that you said that. I mean, I love fashion and I love cars. And those are two areas where color is so important. And you can see, I remember, Porsche recently, they dropped this, a few years ago, they dropped this gray, this flat gray color onto the market. And now, like, everybody's, every car is coming in that gray. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's a way of reinventing, to some extent, but it's also allowing each generation, and what's a generation in music, like 3 years or 5 years, but it's allowing each generation an opportunity to own its own thing, the way that I did when I was 20, and I got into these, these wood basses, so yeah, I love that.
I have one real quick question for you. You got talking about the Rio cover and just how significant it was. Do you recall seeing it for the first time, way back in the day when it was presented to you? Like, what was that like?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the first time I saw it, it was in its complete state. And, the painting that had been commissioned by the band had been taken by the graphic designer and sort of put into a frame. I've come to believe that there are times in your, if you're creative, there are times in your life where you're just going to be so focused that everyone around you is going to be focused too. And I have to say, at that moment in our lives, in that summer of 1982, when we were just wrapping up this album, and I'm not one to blow this group's trumpet, but there's not a bad note on that album. It's just everything came together for Duran Duran and for the 5 musicians in Duran Duran for that album. But it also, I could say the same for every engineer, the producer, the artist, the graphic designer. Everything around that project was absolutely as good as you could have wanted it to be. So it just felt super iconic, and I actually, looking back, if anything, I was probably, it's not a picture of us on the cover. We're not doing that. But I've got to credit our manager. He had the vision to commission the painting, and and our record label had introduced us to this fantastic graphic designer who'd been working with us from the beginning. So we had a great team around us.
I can't think of another album cover from that era that pops into my mind, but that one, you say Rio, and it's there. It's earned its place in my permanent memory banks.
Yeah. No, it's a good one. I'm proud of it. Hence the Rio Dream Bass.
100%.